use one. Shana Tova, everyone. Gmar Tov. So nice to see you all. I will also just let you all know I'm pretty much, well, me and Mac are the only ones who are privileged to really see how full the house is, because obviously this year, as everyone's trying to figure out for themselves what works best. It's great to see everyone who's here in front of me tonight, and it's great to see everyone who's tuning in online. It's, every year is a new experience, and this year is no exception to that rule. I want to start us off with a poem by Yehuda Amichai, but I want to first start by way of an apology in the spirit of Yom Kippur. Last year, so as I've mentioned before, and will probably continue to mention, incorporating English poetry specifically has been something that started when the pandemic started for me and bringing it to CAA. And it's something that's brought a lot of really wonderful meaning and just something different to each week's service, which I've been really pleased with, and I've gotten good feedback, so I know other people have been pleased with it as well. And last year, I started this service with a poem by Yehuda Amichai talking about kind of how familiar it was for him to put on the talit, and I think specifically on Erev Yom Kippur. And it spoke so deeply to me, and I was going to read it again this year, and then I thought, and I'm looking out, and I think I kind of had the right thought, that that's actually not a super familiar feeling for everyone, right? There are plenty of people who don't wear talit, there are plenty of people who have never worn a talit, and so this thing that I thought was really kind of bringing us all together last year was actually maybe a little bit more selfish than I intended it to be. So I found a different Yehuda Amichai reading that again talks about getting to a certain place and having a particular feeling, and I hope that it's something that we'll all be able to channel over the course of the next 25 hours as we kind of find it's not going to be the same feeling for everyone, right? It's not for each of you putting on the talit, and that's not as comforting and as warm and as sentimental for all of you as it is for me. And so I think what I really want to channel right now and what I want us to be taking with us is just finding what exactly it is for each and every one of you that's gonna bring you to that place of comfort, bring you to that place of familiarity, bring you to that place of opening yourself up. So this is by the great Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. It is called The Box. It's a little bit more of a vignette than a poem, but once my salary wasn't transferred from the place where I work to my bank account. I went to the bank and entered the large hall that looks like a gleaming space station. I approached the pretty clerk, and she scrolled the letters and the numerals on the computer screen in front of her. And she said, "That's right, the money wasn't transferred." So I said, "Look, I know that, that's why I came." So she sent me to the floor below her to a large quiet hall, more gleaming than the one before. And a clerk more lovely than the one before scrolled the letters and the numerals on a screen that was larger than the one before, and she said to me, "That's right, the money wasn't transferred." So I said, "But I know that, that's why I came." So she sent me to the cellar of the bank beneath her, and the cellar doesn't gleam, and there are no computers, no pretty clerks, and it is lit by a yellow light like the light in my childhood. And a soft, aging clerk heard me and went over to the wooden cabinets behind him in which there were many files and cardboard boxes. He searched and took out a cardboard box, put it on the table, and took the rubber band off the box. And the rubber band was broad and pink as the elastic on women's underwear when I was young. And he thumbed through the papers in the box, found the paper, made amends for the money that wasn't transferred, closed the box, wound the pink rubber band around it, and put it back in the cabinet. And I said to myself, that box is like my innermost heart. And I came up from the cellar and went out into the street. And I'm going to put on my talis, and if anyone hasn't put theirs on yet, you're welcome to join me. And then I will call Ron Pressler up to lead us in Kol Nidre, and Alex and I will open the ark and take out the Torahs. Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam, asher kichanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu hitatef b'tzitzit. And we'll rise and turn to page 204 as we open the ark, take out 2 Torahs, and Ron will lead us into the day.
Zaru ala tzadik ulishre simcha. 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 בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם עבריינים.
Page 205.
כל נדרי ושרי וחרמי וכל עמי וכינויי וכינוסי מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כולהון יחרתנה והון כולהון יהון שרן שביתין בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין נדרנו לנדרי אסרה לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבועות כל נדרי ושרי וחרמי וכל עמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו v'hon kulon yon sharan shvikin shvitin betelin umavutalim la sharirin la kayamin nidarana la nidre vesarana la esare Shavotana la Shavot Kol Nidre Vesare Vacharame Vekoname Vechinuyem Vekinose Ushevut Dinarna Udeishtabana Udacharimna Vedasarnal al-Nashatana Yom Kippurim Ad Yom Kippurim Abba Aleinu Aleinu Letova Kulon Icharatna v'hon Kulon Yehon Sharan Shvikin Shvitin Betelin umavutalim La sharirin Vela kayamin Nidarana la nidre Vesara la esare Shavotana la Shavot
Beautifully done. Alex will take over in the middle of page 205.
V'nislach lechol adahat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lechol ha'am ishkaga v'nislach lechol adahat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lechol ha'am v'ishkaga v'nislach lechol adahat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lechol ha'am ishkaga silachna la'avon ha'am hazeh ki godel chastecha v'chasher nasata la'am hazeh mimitzrayim ve'ad heina v'sham nehemar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu laziman hazeh.
You may be seated for at least a minute before we start with Mariv. We're now going to have to transition out of Kol Nidre and into the evening service. We're going to have a English read.
On this night of atonement, O God of forgiveness, on this night of atonement, we come before you, haunted by memories of duties unperformed, of promptings disobeyed, of beckonings ignored. We confess that there were opportunities for kindness and service which we allowed to pass by in the year just ended. We are ashamed of sins committed with evil intent, as well as follies committed unwittingly, or even with good intentions. Make us honest enough to recognize our transgressions, big enough to admit them, strong enough to forsake them. Humble us by showing us what we are. Exalt us with a vision of what we may yet grow to be. Keep us ever mindful of our dependence upon you, and help us to understand your need of us. United with you in a holy partnership, may we dedicate our lives to your law of love. Help us to create homes filled with joy and harmony, and to labor for peace among communities and nations. On this sacred night, grant us atonement, and help us to find serenity within ourselves. Kindle within us the fires of faith, and set aglow our courage to live the words we pray.
Thank you so much. And now, in just a minute, we'll turn to page 207, and we'll rise for the Baruch. Just a quick note for those of you who are in the room, it's obviously warm tonight. God willing, tomorrow will be a little bit more pleasant, but the AC is on downstairs, so if you feel like you need to refresh, feel free to go downstairs and hang out there for a couple minutes. And also, as with all of Yom Kippur, there'll be lots of standing and sitting. If you feel like you need to sit. That's okay. So we will now turn to page 207, and if you're up for it, we'll rise for Baruch.
Archu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue silently on page 207.
Umavir yom, umevihi laila, umavdil, ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzivaot shemo, ehel chai, vekayam, tamid yimloch aleinu, leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aharavihim.
Amen. And on the top of page 208, let's read together in the English. You have loved your people, the house of Israel, with infinite love. You taught us Torah and mitzvot, statutes and laws. Therefore, Adonai our God, as we lie down or rise up, we shall think of your laws and speak of them, rejoicing in your words of Torah and your mitzvot forever and ever. For they are our life and the fullness of our days, and on them we will meditate day and night. May you never withdraw your love from us. Baruch atah Adonai, who loves the people Israel.
Ki heim chayeinu, leorech yameinu, uvahem nege, yomaham vahalayla, ve'ahavatcha, al tasir mimenu liolamim. Baruch Ato Ohev Amo Israel.
And in the middle of page 208, the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha vedivarta bam Veshivtecha beveitecha uvelechtecha vaderech uveshochbecha uvkumecha uvshartam leot al yadecha vehayu letotafot bein einecha uchtabtam al mezuzot beitecha uvihisharecha.
We continue silently on the top of 209, and we'll come back together for the second paragraph on 209.
Vayomer Adonai El Moshe Lemor Tahaber El Bnei Yisrael Ve'amarta Alehem Ve'asu lahem tzitzit Al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam V'nadnu Al tzitzit hakanaf Betil techeled Ve'haya lachem Letzitzit uritem oto uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai vasitem otam velo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem asher atem zonihim achareihem leman tizkiru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet.
Turn to page 210 and continue right in the middle at the red arrow.
Umalchuto v'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael v'chanu shira v'simcha rabah ve'amiru laham Ichamocha ba'elim Adonai V'kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Nora tehilot osei feleh Malchutcha ra'u banecha Okei ayam lifnei Moshe Ze'eli anu v'yamiruhu Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed V'ne'emar kifada Adonai et Yaakov uge'alo mi'ahad chazak mihimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
And once again, on page 211, please join me in the English. Allow us, Adonai our God, to sleep peacefully and to awaken again to life, our sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace, restore us with your good counsel, and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us, remove from us enemies and pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow, and remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, for you, God, watch over and deliver us, and you are the sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us and over all the people Israel and over Jerusalem.
Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shilomecha Baruch atah Adonai Haporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu Ve'al kol amo Yisrael Ve'al Yerushalayim.
And we rise on page 212, the second paragraph.
Ki vayom hazeh yechaper Aleichem letaher etchem mikol chatoteichem lifnei Adonai titaru. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash shemei Rabbah Alma divera kirhutei ve'amelich malchutei v'chayeichon u'v'yomeichon u'v'chayei techol beit Yisrael bagala u'vizman karim ve'imiru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'l'olmei almaya yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnasei ve'yithadar ve'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudshaha b'richu li'ela mikol birchata ve'shirata tush bechata venechemata Damiran be'alma ve'imiru amen.
We'll continue with the silent Amidah and an opportunity for silent prayer, reflection, and meditation. The formal text begins on page 213 and goes through page 221. And we'll come back together with Oseh Shalom in just a couple minutes.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imiru, amen.
Alex, you may be seated. And anyone else who might still be standing, you may also be seated. This past Sunday afternoon, we had a really lovely baking class over Zoom. Since we won't be having a break fast this year, we organized a session where Judy Matthews, my mother, and Fran Kaplan would go over how to bake a delicious apple cake that you could bake and serve at home. We also, in a nod to CAA tradition, invited Cheryl Blair to talk about what I know of as her mother's kugel, a delicacy that has been a staple at CAA Breakfast for generations. As Cheryl was winding down, telling us about the history of the kugel and tips for making it, she gave us one last important reminder. You just have to remember 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 things in it. Remember that and you'll be fine. Of course, there are exactly 7 ingredients. Because, as we know, 7 is an ever-present and particularly auspicious number in Judaism. 7s pop up everywhere, not just in classic kugel recipes. Just a few examples are the 7 branches of the menorah in the temple, 7 blessings for a newly married couple, 7 aliyot called to the Torah on Shabbat morning, and of course, the 7 days of creation. It's my understanding that the number 7 gains its prominence in large part because of the process of the creation of the world. 7 becomes a number of wholeness, of completion, and of fullness. This year, the Hebrew calendar presents us with a unique opportunity to appreciate another important 7. The year 5782 is a Shemitah year, a sabbatical year, the 7th year in a 7-year cycle laid out by Moses in the Torah. This commandment pops up several times in the Torah text, first in the book of Exodus, when the idea of having land of their own was still a pipe dream for the newly freed Israelites. Exodus 23, verses 10 and 11 read, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield, but in the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave, let the wild beasts eat of it. You shall do the same with your vineyards and olive groves. Why does the land and those who work it need rest? Let's think about a kernel of wheat, the raw material for the flour that is the main ingredient in both the apple cake and the noodles in the kugel. In the spring, we take this tiny grain, a kernel of wheat, and we plant it in the soft earth. That seed interacts with the soil, the water, and sunlight to send up a green shoot that is strong enough to penetrate the surface of the soil. Meanwhile, unseen by our eyes, it will also develop a root system that goes burrowing through the ground. By late summer, that single seed, supported by the work of humans to keep the weeds away, and the work of God and nature to provide the right mix of sun and rain, will have produced roots that extend into the earth as much as 3 feet and a stalk that may be as tall as 4 feet. That stalk, a blade of grass really, will stand pointing straight up at the heavens, withstanding wind and rain and supporting the weight of a seed head on top, containing as many as 30 brand new seeds. Those kernels are harvested, dried, and ground into our flour. Think back to that original little kernel of wheat and all the energy and collaborative forces that must go into helping it produce those yards of organic matter. It sounds exhausting. We know it's exhausting. Surely, those forces deserve a rest. These particular commandments, as they are listed in the Torah, apply in the land of Israel and are still observed within the agricultural sector of the modern state, albeit with some loopholes that allow farmers and farming communities to maintain their livelihoods. But Shemitah is also so much more than simply a set of laws for farmers to be observed in the land of Israel. Shemitah, as recounted in the book of Deuteronomy, was an opportunity to erase debts, release indentured servants, return land to its rightful owners, and care for the needy and poor in ancient Israelite society. It was a cyclically ingrained call for justice and opportunity, an attempt to head off systemic inequities before they could become entrenched. I'm hoping that over the course of this year, we can unpack some of those lessons together. What I want to focus on this evening, however, is that Shemitah, as the English translation to sabbatical may imply, is actually described in the Torah as a Shabbat for the land and for the people who depend on it. Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of pre-Israel Palestine, the man who literally wrote the book on modern Shemitah observance, writes that what Shabbat does for the individual, Shemitah does for the nation as a whole. The soul of the people and the land intertwine during the sabbatical year. The people works with its own soul force on the land, and the land works on the people, refining their character in line with the divine desire for life inherent in their makeup. The people and the land both need a year of Sabbath. As humans, we cannot separate ourselves from the natural processes that take place around us. We need a Shabbat, a rest, a recharge, not because we are separated from and above the rest of creation, but rather because we are part of creation. Similarly, the seventh day and the seventh year stand apart, designated as special, but only because they exist in relationship with and opposition to the other 6 years of the cycle and the other 6 days of the week. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, commenting on Exodus 20, the verse, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Adonai your God, writes that just as we are commanded to keep Shabbat, we are commanded to labor. The duty to work for 6 days is just as much a part of God's covenant with humanity as the duty to abstain from work on the seventh day. That is where the challenge truly arises for us. The 6 mundane years need to exist in delicate balance with the seventh year of Shemitah and rest. After all, the seventh year is really only special and meaningful because it stands distinct from the other 6. But it is not the purpose of the Shemitah to encourage us to spend 85% of our lives twiddling our thumbs waiting for that special seventh year. The other 6 years need to bring meaning to our lives as well. The Shemitah year is not an isolated moment in time. It's an integral part of the cycle. Shemitah is not a call to action. It's a step back from action. It's not the shofar blast sounding to wake us up. Instead, it's an indicator, a chance to check in on how the cycle of our lives is progressing. In this way, the Shemitah isn't that different from what we are doing here tonight and tomorrow on Yom Kippur. We're here tonight on Yom Kippur for Kol Nidre to check in with ourselves, to see how we're doing the other 364 days of the year. Today is not a day to say, this is how I promise to be better in this new year. We know where that path leads. Not 30 minutes ago, we invalidated all of those promises. Rather, we're checking in with ourselves. Where have I fallen short of expectations? How can I hope to do better in the future? While our Yom Kippur check-in is deeply personal, the Shemitah year gives us an opportunity to greatly expand the scope, to evaluate how we connect with ourselves, with each other, with our communities, and with the earth. Hopefully, during this 7th year, we realize that we can do better, and we can take that mentality with us for the next 6 years and act on it. As we move into the Shemitah year, we can reflect on the words of the farmer, poet, philosopher Wendell Berry. Our land passes in and out of our bodies, just as our bodies pass in and out of our land. That as we and our land are part of one another, so all who are living as neighbors here, human and plant and animal, are part of one another, and so cannot possibly flourish alone. We all can heed Berry's words and take advantage of this extended opportunity to recognize those connections, to appreciate the fullness that can come in a cycle of 7. I hope that by doing so, we're able to make the most of the Shemitah year and the next 6 years after that as well. We'll continue together on page 223, back in the Machzors with Alex.
Yale tachnuneinu me'erev, Yavo shavatenu miboker, Ve'yehera erinunenu, Oyad arev, Yale kolenu me'erev, Ve'avoti katenu miboker, Ve'yehera epidionenu, Od arev, Yaleinu yeinu me'erev, Ve'avos lichatenu miboker, Ve'yera et nakatenu, Od arev, Yalemenu seinu me'erev, Ve'avolemano miboker, Ve'yehera et kippureinu, Od arev, Yaleh yishenu me'erev, V'yavot zahareinu miboker, Ve'yehera echinunenu, Oyad arev, Yaleh zichro avonenu me'erev, v'yavo v'yudenu miboker, v'yehera hadratenu, Oyad Arev. Yaleh Dovkeinu me'erev, v'yavo gileinu miboker, v'yehera bakashateinu, Oyad Arev. Yahale enkatenu me'erev, v'yavo elecha miboker, v'yera eleinu Ahad Aharev.
Prayers rise up at evening, coming to you with the dawn, transforming us at dusk. We'll turn to page 226 and rise in anticipation of the first recitation of the 13 attributes of mercy, the literal script that God gave Moses when everyone realized that we were going to err and need to be forgiven. Page 226.
Tahavor al pesha v'timche asham, ki yahom v'yetzevi mosham, tazin shavatinu v'takshiv menu ma'amahar, ki yahom v'yikra v'shem Adonai, v'ya'avor Adonai al panav v'yikra Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Bechanun, Erech Apayim, Verav Chesed V'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'afesha V'chata V'salachta lavoneinu u'chatatenu nechaltanu. Slach lahanu avinu ki chatanu, mechal anu malkeinu ki fashanu, ki at Adonai tov v'salach, v'rav chesed lechol korecha.
You may be seated. We continue on page 227. Kihine kachomer.
Ihine kachomer biyad hayotzer birtoto marchiv uvirtoto mekatzer kein anachnu biyadcha chesed notzer labrit habet ve'al teifen layetzer ki hine ka'even biyad hamisatet birtoto oches uvirtoto mechatet kein anachnu biyadcha mechaye umemotet labrit habed ve'al teifen layetzer ki hine kagar zen biyad echarash Birtzoto divek laor ubertzoto peirash. Kein anachnu be'adcha tomecha nivarash. La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine kahege biyad hamalach. Birtzoto oches ubirtzoto shihilach. Kein anachnu be'adcha el tov v'salach labrita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine kaschuchit biyad hamezageg birtzoto chogeg uvirtzoto memogeg. Kein anachnu biyadcha mochel zadon v'shegeg labrita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine kayeria beyad arokem. Birtzoto meyasher uvirtzoto me'akem. Kein anachnu beyadcha el kano v'nokem. La brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine ka kesef beyad hatzorev. Birtzoto mesag seger birtzoto mitzaharev. Kein anachnu beyadcha. Mamtzil mazor teref. Labrit habeit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Labrit habeit ve'al tefen la yetzer.
And now we'll turn to the top of page 232 and rise for another rendition of the 13 attributes.
El holreit alanu lomar shlosh esrei zichar lanu hayom b'rit shlosh esrei kemo shodatan amikedem kemo shekatuv vayered Adonai b'anan vayityatzei v'mosham vayikra b'shem Adonai vayavor Adonai al panav vayikra Adonai Adonai el rachum v'chanun erech apayim b'rav chesed v'emet notzer chesed la'alafim notzer avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh v'salachta lavonenu u'chatatenu nechaltanu. Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu mechalnu malkeinu ki fashanu ki ataronai v'tov v'salach v'rav chesed lechol korecha.
And the last paragraph on page 232.
Selach nalavon hamazeh godel chastecha v'chasher nasata le'am hazeh ממצרים ועד הנה, ושם נאמר.
ויאמר אדוני, סלחתי כדבריך.
ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך.
When Moses recited this prayer, it is recorded, Adonai said, I forgive as you asked. And we'll continue on page 233 with the bolded lines as the ark is opened for Shema Koleinu.
Shema Shema Koleinu Adonai Eloheinu Chus v'rachem aleinu v'kabel v'rachamim v'ratzon es tefilosenu.
Shema Koleinu Adonai Eloheinu, Chus rachem aleinu, v'kabel rachamim ratzon et tfilateinu.
Ashiyabeinu Adonai v'chavana shuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
Ashiveinu Adonai lecha v'nashuva, Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
Al tashliachenu milpanecha v'ruach kodshecha al tikach minenu.
Tashlichenu milpanecha, v'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
Al tashliachenu v'yesikno kichvos kochenu al tazvenu.
Tashlichenu le'etikna, kichlot kochenu al tazveinu.
Eloheinu v'Elokei avoseinu v'imoseinu al tazvenu v'al tishenu v'al tichivenu v'al tafabriska itanu. Korvenu l'sorostecho v'amdeinu b'mitzvosecho korvenu d'rochecho. Chatli'edenu l'raya shemecha, u'mo es levovecha, levovenu le'havosecha, v'noshuv elecha, le'emes v'lev shalim. U'loma'an shimcha gadol, timcha v'sislach la'avonenu, Kakosu b'divrei kodshecho, v'ma'an shimcha Adonai, v'solachta b'avoni ki yirahu. Eloheinu v'Elokei avoseinu v'imoseinu silach lanu Mechalonu kapelonu.
Thank you, Jerry. Yashikoach. We're on the top of page 234.
Ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu anu v'anecha ve'ata avinu anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu anu kehalecha ve'ata chelkeinu, anu nachlatecha, ve'ata goraleinu, anu tzonecha, ve'ata roeinu, anu charmecha, ve'ata nodreinu, anu v'ulatecha, ve'ata yotreinu, anu rayatecha, ve'ata dodeinu, anu segulatecha, ve'ata kiroveinu, anu amecha, ve'ata malkeinu, anu mamirecha, ve'ata mamireinu. Anu azefanim ve'ata rachum v'chanun, anu kishei oref, ve'ata ha'erech apayim, anu mle'ei avon, ve'ata malei rachamim, anu yamenu ketzel over, ve'ata hu ushnotecha lo yitamu.
You may be seated for just one moment. Thank you, Jerry. Yashkoach. So we're about to start the vidui section, the prayers of confession, which, if you've ever done this before, you know we're going to say them a lot of times over the next 25 hours. And the script is pretty much the same each time. And I feel like every year I struggle with, well, what exactly do I do saying these same words over and over and over? How can I make them different for myself each time? And I stumbled upon a poem, I think 3 months ago, that the minute I read it, I realized that this was a poem for Yom Kippur, not least of which it's called "It's Hard to Keep a Clean Shirt Clean," which, as we wear white, and thankfully we don't eat while we're wearing all this white, but we know that regardless, keeping white things white is really difficult, and that's also a great metaphor for sin, for things where we've done wrong and for things that we want to do better. So this is called "It's Hard to Keep a Clean Shirt Clean" by June Jordan. It's a little bit longer than what I usually bring, but we're going to be standing for a couple minutes after this, so just close your eyes if you want and appreciate the words. It's a sunlit morning with jasmine blooming easily and a drove of robin redbreasts diving into the ivy, covering what used to be a backyard fence. Were doves shoving aside the birch tree leaves when a young man walks among the flowers to my doorway, where he knocks, then stands still, brilliant in a clean white shirt. He lifts a soft fist to that door and knocks again. He's come to say this was or that was not, and what's any one of us to do about what's done, what's past, but prickling salt to sting our eyes. What's any one of us to do about what's done? And 7-month-old Bingo puppy leaps and hits that clean white shirt with muddy paw prints here and there. And what's any one of us to do about what's done? I say I'll wash the shirt, no problem. 2 times through, the delicate blue cycle of an old machine. The shirt spins in the soapy suds and spins and rinse and spins out dry. Not clean. Still marked by accidents, by energy of whatever serious or trifling cause, the shirt stays dirty from that puppy's paws. I take that fine white shirt from India, the threads as soft as baby fingers, weaving them together, and I wash that shirt between the knuckles of my own 2 hands. I scrub and rub that shirt to take the dirty markings out. At the pocket and around the shoulder seam and on both sleeves, the dirt, the paw prints tantalize my soap, my water, my sweat equity, invested in the restoration of a clean white shirt. And on the 11th try, I see no more. No anything unfortunate, no dirt. I hold the limp fine cloth between the faucet stream of water as transparent as a wish the moon stayed out all day. How small it has become, that clean white shirt. How delicate, how slight. How like a soft fist knocking on my door. And now I hang the shirt to dry as slowly as it needs the air to work its way with everything. It's clean, a clean white shirt nobody wanted to spoil or soil that shirt. Much cleaner now, but also not the same as the first before that shirt got hit, got hurt. Not perfect anymore, just beautiful. A clean white shirt. It's hard to keep a clean shirt clean. We'll pick back up at the bottom of page 234 and prepare for the vidui, the prayers of confession, and doing our own wringing out of our own dirty laundry, as it were. Page 234, at the bottom of the page, we rise.
Eloheinu v'leavoteinu ve'imotenu tavo lefanecha tefilatenu ve'al titalei mitchinateinu shein anachnu azefanim hukshe oref loma lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'leavoteinu ve'imotenu Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu, aval anachnu ve'avotenu ve'imotenu chatanu.
Page 235 at the top.
Ay, 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 Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, ay, 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 Hevinu, Vehir Shanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker. Ay, 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 Yatsnu Ra, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Maranu, Niatsnu, Sorarnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sorarnu, Kishinu, Orev. Ay, 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 Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tayinu, Titanu.
And we'll turn to the inside back cover of our mahzors. We're not going to knock ourselves down without at least picking ourselves back up a little bit, and we'll continue with the positive vidui, the list of the great things we've done this year.
Ay, 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 ay. Ahavnu, Berachnu, Gadalnu, Dibarnu Yofi. Ay, 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 ay. He'elinu, Bechasnu, Zeraznu, Chamalnu tipachnu emet. Ay, 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 ay. Yatznu tov, kibadnu, lamadnu, machalnu, nichamnu, salalnu, orarnu, ha'alnu, sadaknu, kivinu la'aretz, richamnu, shakadnu, tamachnu, taramnu, tikanu.
And we'll turn back to page 237 in just a moment. We'll continue with the alphates. The way we're going to do the alphate is similar to how we did it last year, which is Alex and I are going to read one section responsively for each service. Again, trying to make as much as possible out of the repetition and also focus us in a little bit more on what are the words that we're saying. So we're on the top of page 237.
We have sinned against you unwillingly and willingly.
And we have sinned against you through hardening our hearts.
We have sinned against you thoughtlessly.
And we have sinned against you in idle chatter.
We have sinned against you through sexual immorality.
And we have sinned against you openly and in private.
We have sinned against you knowingly and deceitfully.
And we have sinned against you by the way we talk.
We have sinned against you by defrauding others.
And we have sinned against you in our innermost thoughts.
We have sinned against you through forbidden trysts.
And we have sinned against you through empty confession.
We have sinned against you by scorning parents and teachers.
And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake.
We have sinned against you by resorting to violence.
And we have sinned against you by public desecration of your name.
We have sinned against you through foul speech.
And we have sinned against you through foolish talk.
We have sinned against you through pursuing the impulse to evil.
And we have sinned against you wittingly and unwittingly.
Ve'al kulam Elohai selichot slach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu.
And we'll continue on page 240 on the left-hand side of the page, a historical list of pretty much not everyone in the Torah whose prayers were answered, but a good reminder of all the people who were answered when they called out to God. May the one who answered Sarah past the time of her youth, Huyanenu. May the one who answered Abraham on Mount Moriah, Huyanenu. May the one who answered Isaac, their son, bound on the altar,
Huyanenu.
May the one who answered Rebekah as her son struggled within her,
Huyanenu.
May the one who answered Jacob at Bethel,
Huyanenu.
May the one who answered Leah in her loneliness,
Huyanenu.
May the one who answered Rachel, desperate for a child,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Joseph, abandoned in prison,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered the Hebrew midwives, Shifra and Puah, as they stood at the birthing place,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Yocheved, having faith on the bank of the Nile,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered the people Israel on the shores of the sea,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Moses standing on the slopes of Sinai,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Miriam with her well of water,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Aaron offering incense to God,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered Pinchas seeking his place above the crowd,
Huyanenu.
may the one who answered the daughters of Zelophehad standing their ground,
Huyanenu.
and may the one who answered those who are righteous, upright, decent, and compassionate answer us.
Huyanenu.
And we'll stay standing for one more minute as we turn to page 244 and open the ark for the alternative Avinu Malkeinu. We'll begin silently and pick up at the bowls, repeating after Alex.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu V'Sanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Geula V'Yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Geula V'Yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Selicha Umchila.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Slicha Umechila. We continue silently on 245.
Avinu Malkeinu Choneinu Va'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu Choneinu Va'aneinu Ki ein banu masim Aseimanu Tzedaka v'chesed Aseimanu Tzedaka v'chesed V'hoshienu.
We continue on page 245 with the full Kaddish.
Yitkadal v'yitkada shemehera haba.
Amen.
Ve'alma div'rakirute ve'amlich malchute v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayedecho beit Yisrael b'hagahala u'vizman kori ve'yimeru amen.
Amen.
Hey Shmei Rabba mehevarach leolam lo meyom ahaya d'lam dararam mararam bam bam d'lam dam 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 Yitbarach ve'yishtahava v'par ve'yitroman ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar v'yitale ve'yitalal shemei dekudsha Li'ela, Li'ela, Mikol, Birchata, Veshihirahata, Tushbechata v'nechemata damiran me'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Titkabel tzeloton uva'uton dechol Yisrael kadam avuhon divishmaya ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlom araba mishmaya vehechayihim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Ose shalom bihim rohomam, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Page 246, Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol lahateit gidula liyotzeh bereshit shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot velo hosamanu kemishpechot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem vegohor aleinu kechol hamonam ve'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'yosed haaretz ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Before we continue with Mourner's Kaddish, we'll turn to page 248 and sing our excerpt from Psalm 27, the Psalm for the season of repentance, Achad Sha'alti. It is coincidentally 7 lines down on the page.
Achad sha'alti mehet Adonai otavakesh. Achad sha'alti mehet Adonai otavakesh. Shifti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai lachazot b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo lachzot b'noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo.
247. Please join me. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divrach yirtei ve'amlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayed chol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, v'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom mimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. You may be seated. I was on the phone with someone I haven't spoken to or seen in a while from this congregation, and she asked me, this was this week, she asked me, are both Ron and Alex going to be participating at Kol Nidre? And I said, yes, of course. And she said, well, aren't you lucky? And I could not agree more. Yasher koach to you, Ron. Yasher koach to you, Alex. Thank you both so much, as always, for leading us in this really, really powerful and incredible evening. And of course, also a big thank you to Mac for making sure everyone can hear me, to Barry Salloway and Robert Kaplan for keeping an eye on the door, and also to Barry Salloway for the beautiful flowers. And Yasher koach, Jerry, as well. Thank you. Just a couple quick announcements. Obviously, we'll be back here at 9, both online and in the room. The schedule will be pretty much as it's printed online. The one thing I want to highlight that's going on tomorrow that's not on the schedule, but that I'm very excited about, is at Mincha, in lieu of reading the book of Jonah, we're going to have one of the chaplains that I worked with this summer at Beverly Hospital. She's going to come and be in conversation with us about the book of Jonah through the lens of moral suffering, moral injury, and resilience, and really kind of tying it into a lot of the things that we're seeing in ourselves and in our loved ones, and a lot of people we really depend upon in this extended time of COVID. So that'll probably be around 5:30 tomorrow. If you need an extra incentive to come to Mincha, that should be it. And just a couple other things I want to highlight in terms of announcements is just that Sukkot is coming up very soon, not to look past the rest of Yom Kippur, but there are really great events being held both by the women's group and the men's club over Sukkot. And so if you want to get involved with either of those groups, Sukkot is a really, really wonderful time, and you can talk to Sue Latham or Russ Bernstein, who are both in the room, and if you are not in the room, send me an email and I'll put you in touch with them. But good Sukkot events going on. And then really to get ahead of myself, on Simchas Torah, we're going to be meeting outside at St. Paul's Church, and I really want to unroll the whole Torah, but we need 25 people to do that, at least. And that's like a good, safe, 6 feet away, 25 people outdoors. So that's a week. That's 2 weeks from yesterday, but just put that on your calendars, and if you can make it, that's a really great opportunity for community participation. Other than that, it's great to see you all. I hope you have a meaningful Yom Kippur, a meaningful and easy fast. It was warm tonight. If you can't, the most important thing, as we've known more than anything else over the last 2 years, is to stay healthy. And if you feel like you need to drink water or have a snack, drink water or have a snack. But otherwise, we will see you back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and we will conclude this evening with Yigdal on page 250.
Yigdal Elohim Chai ve'yishtabach nimtza v'yeneh tel metziuto echad v'yen yachid ke'ichudo elam v'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf v'yeino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon v'en reishi l'reishito Ino adon olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato malchuto Shefa nevuato netano El Anshe segulato v'tifarto, lo kam b'Yisrael kemo she'od, navi u'mavi et emunato, Torah temet natan le'amoel, al yad nevio neman beito, lo yachalif ha'el velo yamir dato. Leolamim lezulahato, tzofe v'yodea sitareinu. Mabit l'sof davar b'kadmato, gomel ish chesed kemifalo, noten l'rashara kerish ato. Yishlach v'ket yamin meshichenu, liftot mechakeket yeshuato. Eitim Yechayel Baruch Asto, Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato, Meitim Yechayel Baruch Asto, Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato.
Yasher Koach, thank you all for joining us. Shana Tova and Gemar Tov. See you tomorrow.
Shana Tova, Gemar Tov.
Folks on Zoom, I will make it so you can unmute yourselves if you want and say hi to each other.
Dad's asleep on the couch and my crotch is
You
falling.
can mute here,
In a way that makes it look like you're going to use it.
yeah.
Oh, yes, Alex.
I was noticing that earlier, how you were like,
There's Joe.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. It's really interesting in a way to pray in our living room, so.
I know, it's strange.
Are you sure I shouldn't put the video on?
Oops, guess I just did put it up again.
I thought I had to.
Dr. Sue.
Hi.
Hey, Deb.
Hi.
Hi again.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
second time you did that.
There's Deb Sabo. Okay. All right.
I was going to ask that at you. I was like, she must have a video on.
I'm unmuted, but I don't have the video.
Then turn the video on.
Good job, Alex.
Oh, there's
There she is. Hi.
Buddy. Come in.
My
All right.
Let's go.
Very nice.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.